In early 2005, Canada's 12-month commitment to Kabul was coming to a close. Most of the nearly 2,000 troops were preparing to return home. We agreed to leave a small provincial reconstruction team of about 200 Canadians behind, a staged and gradual exit from Afghanistan.
These PRTs range in size depending on where they're located. Germans had a 400-person PRT north of Kabul at one point in time. Could have been 80. It would all depend on where we chose to put it.
The Minister of the Defense at the time said that, in fact, we took too long to make up our mind, and by the time we made up our mind, there was only Kandahar available.
I never understood why it took so long, but it took a very long time.
We dithered, and so all the safe places were taken, and we were left with Kandahar.
Around the capital city of Kabul, where these new troops are heading, however, is much more dangerous territory. It is around Kandahar in the southeast. General Rick Hillier had been Chief of Defense Staff for only 1 month, but he had a new and aggressive plan to present to Paul Martin on Afghanistan.
A new generation of troops is heading off to battle.
Hillier wanted a deployment that would return Canada to the most dangerous part of Afghanistan, Kandahar.
Dangerous mission.
Canada would redeploy for 1 more year a force of more than 1,000 combat troops to once again work alongside the Americans and eventually other countries in the NATO alliance. But this time, Canada would command the international force for 9 months.
Dismantling Camp Julian in Kabul so it can be moved to the area around Kandahar.
Hillier argued forcefully that Canada should focus on the political opportunity rather than the obvious risk. Handing over control of Camp Julian to the...
That was part of the discourse for sure. We would get a lot of credit for taking on a mission of this significance from the standpoint of both NATO and the United States. You know, we won't be on the margins anymore after doing a mission of this significance.
Memorials honoring the 8 Canadians who have died in Afghanistan since 2002 will be moved from Kabul to Kandahar very soon.
There was no on ballistic missile defense, and there was no on participating in the invasion of Iraq.
And I think after the government decided not to participate in the missile defense project, any resistance that might have existed within the government to this plan dissipated.
But for approving a return to Kandahar, the new Prime Minister wanted the uniforms in the South Tower to support his top international priority, Africa.
I said that I wanted Canada to lead in Darfur.
He calls the Chief of Defense Staff in and says, from a foreign policy perspective, I'm the policy leader of the country, you're the military leader. I want to know that we can, as a country and as a nation, play a role not just where we've already obliged ourselves to play in Afghanistan, but I believe that a place like Darfur, where, you know, millions of people have died, where we can make a difference, I want to know that we can go in there and help make peace happen there. And if we're going to go into Afghanistan, and I understand we made that commitment, then I want a commitment from you that we can do both.
And he explicitly sat across the table from General Hillier and said, I will do this if you tell me that we can respond and that we will have the capacity to respond in these areas. General Hillier said yes. Very important.
This is a dangerous mission. Kandahar is not Kabul. We have responsibilities to, one, fight terrorism,
to ramp up their presence in Afghanistan. In February, 1,300 soldiers will be patrolling the Kandahar region.
It's a mistake to think that General Hillier imposed his decisions in any way on the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was looking for a transformational leader.
The other thing was that I said, we'll go in for a year.
The Prime Minister received the following brief from the military. This is a combat mission. This is a dangerous mission. This is a 12-month mission. And it is entirely likely that we will suffer casualties.
Precisely the nature our Defense Minister told Canadians to expect. Several of our soldiers have been hurt in a targeted attack.
I wanted to establish right off the bat that we would go in for a year. I knew darn well that there would probably be a spillover and that it would take part of the second year for us to pull out. That's been the history. But I was not going to commit for more than that because I wanted that ability to rotate our troops out.
The brief was not, this is an open-ended mission. We will be in the South indefinitely, and it will be effectively a war.
The families of injured Corporal Jeff Bailey and Master Corporal Paul Franklin boarding aircraft in Edmonton today for the flight to Germany. That's where their loved ones are being treated for very serious wounds suffered in a suicide bombing. A little earlier today, the body of the Canadian diplomat killed in Sunday's deadly attack, Chief Foreign Affairs Officer Glenn.
It was a coherent part of Canada's foreign policy to try and help stabilize the world. It's a United Nations mission that was authorized by the United Nations, where NATO is as a key part of it. It was made complete sense.
When we entered the South, the strength of the counterinsurgency, its vitality, was not appreciated at that time. And these aren't just political weasel words. I mean, the military did not understand. I am convinced that Rick Hillier, I'm convinced that the American military and the NATO leaders did not understand the gathering strength of the counterinsurgency. So we signed on to a combat mission for 12 months, and we ended up in a war.
Hello and thank you for joining us. Every election creates an altered political landscape, and as we look out across Canada tonight, we see a new governing party with representation.
In the next 10 to 14 days, Paul Martin will have to vacate 24 Sussex Drive, and Stephen Harper will step in as Canada's next Prime Minister. But Mr. Harper's in for a busy
Once again,
time.
thank all of you for your efforts. I know a lot of you are going to be with us now in the next few months and years as we start rebuilding this great country of ours. Thank you very much.